Select Characters, where gaming meets analysis.
Hello and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Select Characters podcast. I'm Sam Yates. I will be your host as always. I have a full cast of characters joining me here working as minimum wage employees in a haunted house. To my left, assembling bowls of grapes and spaghetti in order to pass them off as, eyeballs and brains. Enrique Cancel. What's up, man?
Yep, this is going to be very scary. It's going to be the main attraction monster in the bucket of mild depression.
I always wondered why there were so many eyeballs, and also it's normally a mad scientist lair, and those seem like unsanitary conditions. But
are we all employees at Banksy's Dismaland?
Nope. This is your average Midwestern haunted house, and you're all being paid exactly minimum wage. Also, you're independent contractors.
Oh, good.
So there's that. Let's see. To my right, laying out the amazing maze based off the Fibonacci sequence, Christopher Anderson.
Sounds like something I would do. Actually, I'm okay with my lot in life.
Good. It's not a difficult maze, you know, because it's kind of a spiral, but it has artistic integrity, which is very important.
There you go.
And let's see, sitting across the table from me, deblading all of the chainsaws, Brian Dildine.
I quit this job.
That's fine. You know what? There's plenty of people out there to replace you. In this economy, I could find somebody to deblade chainsaws for half the price. Cool. So we're here. We're ready to talk about video games, and let's get to it, shall we? All right, another great week for video games has passed, and let's talk a little bit about what we've been playing. Let's start with you, Enrique.
Destiny: The Taken King, and it is actually pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, I concur. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, you guys talk about it. I'm gonna go make some coffee.
No, I'm actually really happy with it because Destiny was really fun for about maybe 3-4 weeks when it first came out, and then it just got really stale because the story was very poorly delivered and it became really repetitive because they basically took the MMO approach without really fine-tuning it.
Yeah.
And adding the things that make people want to keep playing the MMO. So with the Taken King, they actually smoothed a lot of that stuff out. And I mean, it's already been about 2-3 weeks out, and I'm still actually getting on to play every day.
Yeah, I'm surprised by how much content there is in it now, because I finished the story for the Taken King, but the game just keeps on giving me quests now. And most of them have voice acting. Most of them seem to have something to do with a little self-contained story.
Yeah.
Which is a huge step up from what the game was when it first came out and the 2 expansions that got released after that. So, yeah.
Yeah, something as simple as getting that small narration when you're just loading screen into the story adds a ton of it. And I think Sam mentioned this a few podcasts ago, but I'm finding myself logging on now because you have these really specific dailies you can do. And for me, it gives me that little metric of all right, let me log on and do, this set of quests real quick and knock that out for the day. And that'll be my Destiny fix. So I really like that they kind of cut the content up a bit more.
Yeah. The bounties got very varied now.
Yeah.
There's a ton of different bounties, although I did get Rift specific bounties every single day for the past 4 or 5 days, which I find a bit annoying because I don't really like the Rift game mode in the Crucible.
And I like just the general feel that they've kind of given the game, because I think one of the things that they did that a lot of players found was you have your heroic strikes that once a week there's a daily where you basically go into a super version of one of the mini instance levels. And a group of players actually found that when you get to the last, section of the level, instead of continuing it like you normally do, if you go off the beaten path and you go off this completely side area, it'll port you to a kestrel ship. And if you beat the enemies on there, you actually get a secondary ending to the level, and you get a brand new an exotic sniper rifle.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
really?
Look up Black Spindle. That'll kind of explain what the gist of it, what I'm saying. But that created this huge wave in the community because people realized, holy crap, up to this point, we've just been playing the strikes as, get from point A, point B, and then you're done. But now with, just by adding that one little side area in that level, people are suddenly going back and searching every single nook and cranny for those strikes because, they're wondering what else did Bungie hide. So the fact that they kind of bred that mentality in players is awesome.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool. Huh.
But yeah, yay Destiny.
Yeah, Destiny's really been doing a great job at being a better video game now. All the changes that they implemented, all the quality of life changes that they actually did contribute to the overall feel of the game. It's still a bit rough in some places, because the Taken King is so good from a story perspective, right? It's got pretty good voice acting, it's got cutscenes and stuff, but that only makes the faults of the previous 2 expansions all that more apparent.
Well, I probably agree with you. I wish they'd bring that game to PC. It sounds really neat. But I mean, hopefully by the time they do, there'll be so much content and I can just buy like a big super edition.
Probably.
Enrique, do you think that Destiny on PC will go over well with PC gamers who are used to proper MMOs?
I think it will, because at least two things that I liked from Destiny, regardless of all the issues that it had, was that it did multiplayer really well in terms of what it offered for, co-op and just doing like the PvP aspect of it. So, I mean, that was really well done. And then the first-person shooter elements were actually really well done as well.
Yeah.
So
it's the best shooter on the market right now, if you ask me.
Yeah, those two things alone, I think, would transfer really well to the PC market.
I don't know.
Maybe. I hope so. I mean, I'll play it.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's one sale. There you go.
There you go. That's all they need. It only takes one.
Yep.
It's a pretty good game. It's a good game.
Enrique, anything else?
That's been the main thing I've been sinking my teeth into.
All right, cool. Cruising on over to Chris, who I assume has been playing Destiny this week.
Oh, so much Destiny. But in addition to that, because we already spoke about Destiny, but in addition to that, I've been playing Watch Dogs, which now that the whole controversy surrounding the release of that game is sort of behind us, it's actually a pretty good game. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. The driving is pretty terrible, but I don't know, if you like the Ubisoft open world formula, you will really like Watch Dogs. The hacking doesn't add all that much to the game, but it just gives you a few more possibilities to sort of customize your experience. The story is all right. It's generic, but it's all right. It follows that same Ubisoft thing that all the Ubisoft games do, right? Mm-hmm. Some family member or someone you love dies, and you go on a quest to avenge them. I mean, Assassin's Creed did it, Far Cry did it, and now Watch Dogs does it as well. But it's pretty good.
I think it's cool to hear your impressions now, because I think maybe it's more of like a tempered kind of impression than the sort of when on release the expectations were very different than the actual delivered product.
Yeah. I didn't have any expectations for the game. I saw a couple of things from E3 when it got first announced, when that one trailer that everybody always harkens back to got released. I know about that, and it looked kind of cool to me, but I never really looked into it until recently. And I'm surprised by how all right it is. It's not a great game. It's just all right.
So, did you get a chance to play it when all that backlash was going on?
No, I did not. I sort of stayed away from it.
I'm kind of curious, like when it comes to those kind of things, I'm kind of curious to how much the community climate affects a player's individual opinion of the game.
I think that you're always influenced by what people in your community are saying, even though you've nothing to really base that on. And I think that's definitely the case with Watch Dogs.
Because like I would have loved to take in like a before and after sample group of people that were playing when that whole controversy was going and criticizing the game versus people that are playing it now and are having the kind of attitude you did, where like, it's not a bad game, it's enjoyable.
Aiden Pierce, though, the main character, is that is a very bad character. His character is the reason why we need a meninist frequency. He's like the stereotypical cupboard gruff male who's on the prowl for vengeance. He's got zero to no redeeming qualities. He's basically a dick, He's stealing money from random people left and right. He's beating people up. He's very, very nasty to the people trying to help him. He's just an all-out shit character, and nothing that happens to him in that game is justified, or has justified his attitude towards other people. I really don't like him as a character, so I hope that they don't continue using him in Watch Dogs 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. It's just a bad character.
Maybe he comes around. Maybe that's the big turning point, is he learns to be a good person, or he learns to love again or something after he completes his vengeance. Who knows? No,
he's of the Kratos variety of main character. He's just always angry, and he shall always be angry.
Yeah, from what I heard, he sounds like the kind of guy that'll like chase you to the ends of the earth because you cut in line in front of the McDonald's or something.
Yeah, it's just an all-around nasty person. Just a shit person.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yes, it is.
Anything else?
I've been playing City Skylines After Dark, the new expansion pack.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Cool. Didn't that release also as a free update to anybody that already owns the game?
Yeah, the day and night thing that is free for everyone who owns the base game, and then the expansion adds roads with bike paths, several more transport things, and yeah, it's not all that expensive. I think it was €14 when I bought it. Nice. It adds a whole prison system to to the game as well, where criminals get taken
cool.
to a prison and they get rehabilitated, and then they go out, and then they're all normal, happy, good-behaving citizens again. But the day and night thing is, the difference is literally between day and night. I wish there was a better way to say that, but your cities look so great once the sun goes down and the lights come up, and it's just awesome. You just sit there and just sort of watch your city spring to life at night. It's great.
Nice.
It's pretty good. So I pumped around 10 hours into that this week, just because I really like looking at the day and night cycle.
Does it come along with any like new buildings or new mechanical concerns or anything as the difference between day and night?
Yeah, you can have tourism sections now, and you can have entertainment sections like casinos and all that jazz.
Which take off at night.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
And a bunch of new policies. The AI seems to be a bit smarter about how it goes about its day, so that's good.
Vampires and werewolves coming soon. City Skylines nights.
after dark.
That's right. Okay, cool, man. Does that about wrap it up?
Yeah, that's about it. Between Destiny and City Skylines, there was only a little bit of time left for Watch Dogs, so my week was saturated in between being sick and playing some games.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, not the sick part, but it's great. It's great you had a lot of time for games.
The sick thing was great. I could just stay indoors and play games. It was pretty good.
Awesome, man. All right, Ryan, what's up?
Things are getting pretty crazy with the wedding, so again, I had minimal time to play games this week. Most of my time was spent playing Trials Evolution, which we'll talk about on YouTube, and that's a fantastic game. I loved it. I also played a good amount of Borderlands 2 on my own because of the difficulties we had recording, but I think I might give both of those games a go single player, like just by myself.
It is a really good single player game, Borderlands 2.
Yeah, I mean, in the past I haven't liked playing single player on those games at all, but I had a lot of fun playing Borderlands 2 by myself, so I think I'm going to give them a shot.
Yeah, it's a really good single player game. I played through Borderlands 2 on my own, like the entire story plus all the expansions, and it was enjoyable.
Yeah, it's really fun. And other than that, I lost 7 games of Rocket League in a row, so I'm in a very grumpy stage with Rocket League right now.
Deinstalled it, gave up.
Almost. I won my 8th game, so I was like, you know what? That's your saving grace, Rocket League.
It only takes one W to cancel out. I mean, an infinite number of L's. So it's no problem.
So yeah, that was my week.
Awesome, man. As for me, I got an email that said there was a new update to a game called Keeper RL, which is, I guess it's kind of like a combination Dungeon Keeper / roguelike kind of jam. You start off, you have your keeper and like some minions, and you kind of tunnel into a mountain, get resources, build traps, and expand. And that game's coming along pretty well. I think it's really going to be something special when it's done. I like the aspect of it because you build an army, but then you can also send them out into the world to like take over towns and stuff. And it's a lot of fun to play. Right now, I think they're basically focused on adding content instead of balancing what is there. So there's some parts of it that are still a little rough. A lot of what you're waiting on as far as new units and stuff is randomly generated. So you don't have a fine control over what units arrive at your base, and that's kind of a bummer, but they'll get there. The sprites are great, and I think that game it's going to be something special, but it's a waiting game on that one for me. I beat it again. I mean, I beat it whenever they release an update because it's only like maybe 6 to 8 hours right now to like conquer all the villages. But it's pretty fun. Also played about an hour or so of Life is Strange.
It's not enough.
Which I know it's definitely not enough, which is something that we'll have to talk about on down the road. But that game seems like it's got a lot of potential.
Yes,
I think it was, man. I'll tell you what though, it was frustrating because they're like, they put the butterfly on the screen and they're like, this action has consequences. Yeah. And I was talking to this dude and I finished and Max was like, well, maybe I should rewind time and say the other thing. And I was like, okay, cool. Rewind time, say the other thing. And afterwards she's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I should rewind time and say the other thing. And I'm like, make up your mind, Max.
You are the one that should make up your mind. It's an interesting system because it allows you to always choose the thing that you're 100% behind. It's not like in Telltale games where you're given an option to say something and then you click that option and the character says something completely different. Like the intonation is all wrong and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Life is Strange doesn't have that. If you don't like it, just rewind and choose the other one, or choose any of the options to see which one suits your needs best.
But just having her like presenting that like shred of doubt after both of the options was just kind of disheartening. Anyway, I've got a trick. I'm just gonna make my wife play it, and I'm gonna watch her, and then I can get all the story without having to bother with that kind of thing. So that's gonna be my secret trick for that one.
Fair enough.
But I'm really interested. I mean, the story was pretty compelling. It had me hooked. So I want to see where that goes.
Yeah, the story gets progressively better with each episode, and every like all the development time for each episode is progressively longer for each episode. It's because the story gets more complex and stuff, and they really take their time with each episode before they release it. So I'm really, really happy that they did that. They habitually push the release of a new episode back because it's not done yet, which I find that is a very good attitude towards game development.
Can't wait to play it when it all comes out.
It's done when it's done.
The 22nd of October is when the 5th and final episode is released, so then you have no more excuse.
All right.
A future game club is going to be just Life is Strange. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Life is Strange Club.
That's great.
Oh, yes.
I look forward to that. All right, you guys want to move on and talk about some topics?
Let's do it.
My question is, at least in the current video game environment, almost every video game has a form of progression layered on top of it. Those things are like chocolate and peanut butter at this point. I think that everybody has seen the benefit of having some sort of progression system. And also in line with that, you have a ranking system. And I was wondering if you guys had any opinions on what makes a ranking system particularly compelling or interesting.
I think it has a lot to do with the way that they dangle the carrot on the stick in front of your face most of the time.
Yeah.
It's the way that your rank is represented. Take, for instance, Hearthstone, right? They've got the star system and the different names for each rank. And every time you get one of those stars, it feels really, really good, even though most of the ranks you get are sort of inconsequential.
Yeah.
But it's just the way that it's set up that makes it feel really good. For instance, another example is Heroes of the Storm, another Blizzard game, incidentally, where you've got that progress bar that slowly fills up the more you win. And that feels good when you hit a new level. It's the same as in most MMOs. Every time you get a new level, a cool sound effect plays and there's a visual effect, that sort of tickles that part of your brain that is really into getting rewards.
Yeah, and you get new stuff usually, which is definitely one of the cooler sides of it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Sort of working your way deeper into having all of the options available to you. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the knowledge that you are better than some other players, coupled with you getting free stuff.
No doubt.
Gets you hooked.
Yeah, and I think that it helps too because you sort of, as you rank up, you play against people of other similar skill levels. So if that works well, then it basically has to in order for a ranking system to be good, because otherwise people of disparate skills are playing against each other and nobody's really having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think there's more to say in terms of the multiplayer aspect, and I think that's part of the reason why the ranking system works so well, because you have someone to compare it against. Because for every silver, or diamond tier player out there, there is that shitty scrub bronze player, and like you said, like that, the reason that ding or like that progress bar filling up feels so gratifying to you is because you can see that comparison against everybody else that doesn't have that rank yet.
Isn't it sort of mean to sort of feel glad, like knowing that your progress bar is filling up, while at the same time the guy that you just played against, his progress bar is decreasing slowly?
It is, but I think like on some weird subconscious level, I think like a lot of us just get some kind of gratification out of just that victory over others.
I mean, that's just competition, man.
Yeah, but I mean, like Diablo or Hearthstone, I mean, I don't think that progress bar would be nearly as gratifying as if you weren't, if there weren't, I guess you don't have other people to gauge that kind of level against.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, the whole point is to see where you rank against other people. So I think, if you have to choose between them losing points and you gaining points.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not even in the sense of actively competing in them. Like, I'm not saying like in regards to you're playing against somebody and you know that you advance. It's more like, when you look at the leaderboards and you see, hey, think about like World of Warcraft. MMO Champion does this thing where like they'll go through like some of the achievements and they'll say what percentage of players have gotten that achievement. Yeah. And a lot of the, PlayStation 4 does it with trophies, and they do that. And you get like this kind of sense of satisfaction, seeing an achievement like, hey, only 3% of the player base has that, and if you're part of that 3%, like, that's what makes that kind of progression feel, give it some little bit of weight.
Yeah, that's true. And that's not even bad for the other 97% necessarily. I mean, maybe they didn't want to, maybe they didn't care, but like however they felt about it doesn't matter. You still feel like, look at me, 3%. And that's good because it's got positive externalities. Like it's good for everybody involved in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. In terms of just ranking system again across all games, I think it's going to kind of sound cheesy, but the ability of that system to inspire hope in you is very important, because one of the reasons I quit League was I wasn't confident that I would win the next game. Every single time I played, I felt like it was a 50-50, like whoever gets the troll is going to lose, you know? And so there was a time came where I was just like, why am I even going to attempt this when I feel like I'm not going to win? And I think other games do it better and other games do it worse, but it kind of mirrors the dangling carrot thing, but this is more of an attitude that the ranking system gives you, and it's like you have to feel like you're going to win that next one, or it's not going to keep people hooked.
Well, isn't it the point of being pitted against people of a similar skill level that it's always a sort of a toss-up?
Yeah, but that depends on how much you trust their matchmaking.
Yeah, right. I get what you mean.
Well, ideally, right? Isn't the ideal of any matchmaking system to make it eventually be 50-50? Shouldn't you win half the games and lose half the games?
I suppose games that make you feel like it's going to be 50-50, you know, the closest they can get to 50-50 are going to be the ones that are the most popular. And maybe League of Legends, because it's so popular, is doing that for a lot of people. It just didn't do it for me. I feel like out of all the games I play now, I feel like Counter-Strike gives me the most hope for the next game, because outside of Smurfs, it's pretty I mean, if you need to, you can carry a game by yourself if you're good enough, of course, but if you have to, you can carry a game by yourself, where a game like League can't necessarily carry a game by yourself.
Do you think that window into the various mechanisms and statistical calculations that comes from behind a ranking system? I know that some games don't tell you anything about that and other games have it very clear. Do you think that knowing about that kind of thing makes a ranking system feel better or worse? Like ELO and Glyco and all that stuff?
I feel better knowing.
Right. I think so too. I think I'd like to know, but obviously that sort of comes along with the same problems of being able to manipulate it or being able to aim for certain goals that increase your rank or basically save what you can, like in a match what you're going to lose, kind of get as many of those rank points as you can through whatever those actions are. But I like to know. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I think MMR, if you know what that is a bit of a problem.
How come?
Well, say that you're in Heroes of the Storm, everything that you do influences your MMR, right?
Yes.
So as a newly minted player, you're going to have quite a few losing streaks at the start, which means that your MMR gets essentially nuked from orbit, and it's very hard to climb out of that hole again. And there's this thing in the Heroes of the Storm community where, what was the term? Give me a sec. I can remember this. No, I can't. Well,
Okay.
At a certain point, because of that, your MMR is so bad, you'll just continually struggle to improve your MMR.
Oh yeah, that's like what you would call like ELO hell or something like that.
That's it,
Yeah.
MMR hell.
Like
Thank
you're
you.
so
That's
low
the
that
thing.
you can't climb out of it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Which defeats the point of a ranking system, or at the very least makes the ranking system seem very flawed.
Well, here, do you guys believe in that?
I do, but that's because I know that, okay, a lot of ranking systems are based statistically on like a normal curve, which means that on the opposite ends of the spectrum, the people who are ranked very low and the people who are ranked very high, which is going to be like 1/2 of your total population on both sides.
Okay.
That's where most ranking systems tend to fall apart. Like they work the best in the middle, but it's the edges that cause the most problems. And the thing is that when you are at the bottom side of it, the people who you're going to get matched against are also at the bottom side of it. And in something like ELO, where you're actively taking points away from the other player, and that's what increases your ELO rank, then it's almost impossible to do. Like the span of time you would have to spend on that is enormous because you're so far down to the other side of things. And that also means that the people on the very good side, like the absolute best players, if they ever lose, they fall a long way down.
Yeah.
So that's part of it is a real thing. I mean, it happens. But generally speaking, people aren't going to get caught in those corners of the normal curve. But there are other things that have, like, ranking systems that have been made to offset that, like Glyco 3.
I think that's a really good point, because I used to, when I was playing League, I used to think, ELO Hell was just a bunch of BS that people who didn't want to, like, they didn't put the time in to improve just said because they were angry. But I kind of feel like it's a thing now, because in Counter-Strike, my friends and I were stuck in silver for a very long time. And then once we got out of silver, it's like we all shot up in ranks, like within a matter of a few weeks. So yeah, I feel like there's something to that. Like if you're way out on the edge, like you're kind of screwed unless you make a huge improvement in your play.
And that's because they automatically matchmake you. Like if you were allowed, obviously this would ruin the whole system, but if you were allowed to choose what match you go into, those people would have a way to claw back from the bottom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I imagine generally speaking, the people who you hear complaining about ELO Hell are less likely to actually be there, but I mean, it is a thing that can happen. I mean, it's going to change. It's not like a fixed system. Like, it's going to change based on the people, however many people are playing the game and their relative skill levels, and they'll just set the median at, whatever number makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it's not really apparent how it works. Like, people have a vague idea of how MMR is calculated, but most of the math is still sort of secret, or the devs are being secretive about it.
Right. And I think they have to. I mean, because if you could run it, it just feels not as good to play a game and know exactly how all those tumblers are falling in line to create a rank up. And it feels like you're playing for that. I mean, it's nice to have that, and it's nice to play for that when you don't know exactly how it's working, because then you just kind of abstract that off as saying, okay, I need to win.
Yeah. Plus, it becomes significantly easier for people to game the system if they know exactly how that system works. And with a game like League of Legends and Heroes of the Storm that have a ton of people playing, there's probably a couple of dudes there who can figure it out. So it might be for the best to keep at least a part of the algorithm hidden from everyone.
Do you guys think ranking systems like these are healthy for games? Because it seems like any game that you put a competitive ranking system into automatically becomes fixed on that system. So like Rocket League, for example, used to they've always had ranked, right? Yeah, but they said they were going to reset it at the beginning, if I'm correct. So there was a point in time where the rank didn't matter in Rocket League, pretty much. And that was the most enjoyable time I had in that game. And then once I started playing competitive, I like it, but I don't know, it's you guys know my gripes with like competitive, like when it gets too serious and it's not fun anymore. I feel like a lot of games are falling into that trap, and it's like sometimes I just want to play a game and not have to worry about all the ranking.
Well, you can do that. I mean, you can play unranked in that game.
That's true, but it doesn't have the same feel because everyone's so focused on competitive.
Even if that was true, you'd still have to have it behind the scenes. Even if it didn't have a forward-facing aspect that is displayed to the player, you'd still need something in the back end running to make sure that everybody was having a good time.
Yeah,
I think at the base level, you can agree that playing against people of very disparate skill levels is kind of a bummer.
Yes, it is.
Hey, right. Back to, because you said you have a kind of like a distaste when a game gets too competitive. Is there like a hard line that you reach that makes you kind of switch gears, or is it more like a gradual increase that eventually you get to a point where you decide, you know what, I'm getting tired of this, I'm going to stop?
I think it's when the general attitude towards the game shifts from positive to negative.
Okay.
So if I'm playing by myself, if I'm kind of dreading the next game and I'm only doing it for the rank because my brain wants me to, get the carrot, I stop enjoying it. Or like when I'm playing with friends, like if we're playing Counter-Strike and we lose 3 games in a row and everyone's pissed off, but they all want to play another to get that one win. It's like, right. I don't want to play anymore. It's not worth it at that point to me.
You got to end on a hit.
if I was a professional player, and it really mattered, yeah, of course I'd have a totally different mindset, but it's like I'm playing in my room with some buddies that I know over the internet. It's not make or break for me.
I just find it interesting how like the mentality changes when you reach those landmarks, when you're approaching it from a single player experience where you have control over your own ranking versus multiplayer games like MOBAs where your ranking is entirely dependent on your team itself. And it sucks because, like especially with League of Legends where you technically have your own personal ranking, but that's still entirely dependent on whether or not the team you're playing with is performing well or not. And I can understand like that shift into I guess, toxic behavior or negativity kind of occurs because you almost like strip the control away from the players in a sense.
Yeah, it's true. You can get a little bit more control in those games by playing with a team of people that you know and know how they play.
But I mean, but even then, like, you know, if you're playing, even if you know the team and one guy's just having a bad match and he brings the whole team down, you kind of get this anxiety in you and just this anger because what should technically be within your control is no longer there.
Yeah, that's now that you bring that up, that's another thing that kind of irks me about matchmaking is when you say in League you're duo queuing with somebody and one guy's diamond and the other guy's bronze, so now you're all playing with a bunch of golds. It's like, yeah, it's cool that you guys get to play together no matter what rank you are and that kind of thing, but and I've done it too. I've been the low guy and I've been the high guy in that situation, but in my experience, the best games always come from everybody being within a rank or two of each other, no matter the game. So I don't know.
That's interesting because in the team-based games, I tend to see that as you advance in skill, what you find is more and more pre-made. Like that high skill section of the bracket is normally composed of more and more people who know each other and work as a team.
Yeah,
but that's because those people know that in order to increase their chance of winning, they have to play with a team of people that they're used to playing with. That just sort of maximizes your chance at winning.
Right, but there's how many other groups of people all doing the same thing, which then like alters the meta at the high end of the skill
it does.
spectrum.
It does for sure, but all those people are the same rank. You're not going to have a global elite playing with a silver 2 against global elite. At least hopefully not. But
yeah, I don't think I've ever
But yeah, I do think in any game the high end is going to be skewed towards the team-based game because I'm going to keep talking about Counter-Strike and League because those are the two I have the most experience with. But in League, all the pros are the highest guys on the ladder, and they all know the basics of playing on a team. So you can get 5 random pros or 5 random just high-skilled players. They don't even have to be pros. Put them on a team together, and they're going to know the fundamentals of how a team works, and that's what's going to, propel them forward is how well they can work as a team. And the same thing goes for Counter-Strike. And that's why, I mean, in my opinion, if you want to gain ranks in any game, just start playing with a group of friends and you will quickly gain ranks because the communication is just so valuable in that kind of system.
Yeah, I agree. You need people you can depend on in team-based matches.
Yeah, so... Yeah, it's like, I don't even think you need to increase in skill. If you want to jump up a couple ranks, start playing with 5 people or 4 other people, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I mean, at least for team-based games, that's for sure.
On the other hand, for most people, does ranking actually matter? I mean, some stuff like Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, stuff like that. Everybody is really focused on like you said, the ranking, but for most people, it's not really all that important, is it?
Who's it for? Like, if you're by yourself?
I think it matters to me.
Really?
Yeah. It's an achievement that you yourself achieved.
Yeah, it's important to me because I can't remember sort of 100 matches I've played and like whether I'm getting better at the game and whether my skill is improving. I can't remember that much data altogether. Yeah. But if it just encapsulate all of that into a rank, that's something I can keep track of and something that I can understand.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
As I rank up, I can go, okay, my skill's improving. I'm better than everybody else who's a lower rank than I am, even though like one bad day and I'm going to be joining them. But it's like a measure of progress in a system that I maybe can't keep track of that many individual details over such a long span of time.
Yeah, I had that attitude when I was playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the online stuff. I just I like knowing that there were only 249 something people above me that were better than I was out of the 16,000 registered players online.
Yeah, and I think it feels good. I think a ranking system of some type feels good on its own. It just needs to feel like it makes sense, even if you don't know the exact calculations taking place in the back end. Yeah. But I think that a ranking system is great for a game and improves it overall.
For a lot of people, it is it is a measurement of your skill, but for most of us, it's just a pat on the back, really.
You'll never know you're a good boy if nobody pats you on the back.
Let's talk about games like Tom Clancy's The Division and Destiny, mostly because I've been playing a lot of Destiny for the past week. But those games, they use sort of twist on a traditional MMO thing. Call it an MMO Lite if you want. It's not as massive, and you don't have a huge shared world like in for instance, World of Warcraft or something like WildStar. It's a bit smaller in scope, yet it takes a lot of elements from MMO games. And do you think that the format works when only the essentials are present there?
I don't believe so. And case in point, Destiny Year One got a massive amount of flack because I think that they imported the bare bone essentials from an MMO, but they didn't bother to kind of dress it up like they do with in terms of like story and narrative, things like that. So what people ended up getting and complaining about was a game that was very fragmented, and the experience felt very repetitive after a while.
I would go as far as to say that Year 2, while a lot better, while actually feeling like a finished game, is still really, really bare bones in terms of MMO mechanics.
Have you done? Well, you haven't done the raids yet, have you?
No.
Because that definitely brings it over the edge in terms of like whether it's an MMO or not. Because like when you really get into like the necessity of teamwork inside the raids, because I mean for me that's one of the telling signs of an MMO is how like the gameplay elements that require cooperation between different people. Because otherwise it could just be a single player game, which is one of the running jokes we had with Star Wars: The Old Republic when it came out. That one of the biggest things that we had was like, man, like that's like the best single player MMO I've ever played. Because so much of the game could be done by yourself that you really had no requirement for others. But, you know, with a game like World of Warcraft, like, there are set missions and the bulk of the gameplay. In terms of endgame, you have to have a well-organized group of people. And with Destiny, especially when it comes to the raids and some of the hard mode bosses, they definitely have that little checklist requirement.
I don't mind it. I've always thought it was pretty cool just to be running around in a world and just see somebody else running by and knowing that that's another player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
without being like getting online and seeing, you know, oh, there's 300,000 people online, but I'm only going to see the 10 of them who are in this match that I'm playing.
Right.
That feels really segmented, but just having an open space where you can run around and see other people doing their thing feels cool.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's like a passive multiplayer, I guess, because
Yeah,
you're not directly interacting with them, but it's just nice to know that they're there, like somebody else is participating in that experience with you.
So if you want to talk about at least the trend of video games like FPSs being MMO Lite, I think that just in terms of seeing the rest of the player base instead of just being kicked back to a menu where you jump back in, I think that's really awesome. I think that's cool.
Yeah, it makes the world feel more alive. That's definitely true.
I kind of like how it helps. I was talking earlier about the requirement for multiplayer when it comes to like the raids and stuff like that, and that's really cool for just from a mechanic standpoint because it kind of puts you at awe. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe we managed to organize this. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, I really like how games like Destiny, and it looks like Tom Clancy's Division will be doing the same, how it can kind of segment that multiplayer experience and it gets rid of the obligation. Because I know one of the things that I ended up hating about World of Warcraft, WildStar, and other MMOs is that after a while, there's almost a sense of obligation where you're no longer getting on because you want to have fun. You're getting on because you feel like you have that social responsibility to the other players because they're expecting you.
Well, that can still happen in Destiny. I mean, you can't do the raids with 5 people. You can't do the strikes with 2 people.
Yeah, but not to
the
degree where, you know, it happens like in an MMO now where like, you know, there's like weeks of prep before a raid and you're required to get on a certain amount of time. It's at least the times I play with Destiny, you know, I can get on at night. I can choose to do the strikes with the matchmaking with the 2 or 3 buddies that I can find. And as far as the raids, you know, maybe it's like, hey, do you guys want to try the raid this weekend? And it becomes like a very casual, spur-of-the-moment activity rather than that big social obligation that I have.
Right.
I think that's just a difference of the time expectation between genres. I think that MMOs, the traditional MMOs, sort of start from square one saying the time you spend in this game is how successful you will be at this game.
Yeah.
And I think the people coming to an FPS-based kind of MMO Lite, they're not really... That's not like the starting point for them, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's good. I mean, that's a great thing. I think that MMOs kind of get out of control with that on down the line because it's who can sit here the longest. And that doesn't seem like a healthy way to develop a game to me. I
got into a really interesting discussion with a couple of friends, and I wonder if you guys could shed some light on your opinions. But he brought a really interesting point about how Destiny, you know, we're talking about the whole MMO Lite aspect of it. And we're kind of wondering how they're going to handle further expansions because, you know, with World of Warcraft, as the story progresses, they kind of, I guess, not necessarily dumb down, but they condense the leveling experience for other players where it'll take you less. If you want to play through the story and stuff like that, you can just kind of do it in a reduced amount of time. But when it comes to actual, I guess like the first-person shooters like Destiny and stuff like that, because the game is on a smaller scale, you don't have. I guess you can't ignore the previous iterations like you can in an MMO, like World of Warcraft, for example. Wrath of the Lich King already went and gone. If you're playing the game like from a story and lore standpoint, mechanically, we are way past like Wrath of the Lich King. Arthas is now dead, whatever, and we're currently playing Worlds of Draenor, and I guess all the events taking place in that time and point in the game, take into consideration that we've already gone and beaten that. But anybody else that's starting the game from scratch and they're kind of leveling up through the experience, they can actually go to the Wrath of the Lich King zone, Northrend, and play through that self-contained story at that time and without interference from what's going on now. And we're kind of wondering how that would be applied to a game like a smaller scale game like Destiny, where you don't have the option of kind of having all that content segmented in a way.
Well, we don't know yet, really. We have to wait and see what they're going to do with the second one. How are they going to do that? Is the second game just like in most MMOs an update to the original game that just adds more areas and stuff? Do you need a different disc every time you want to play the second one? What's going to happen if you haven't played the first one, but the second one looks very appealing to you? You want to jump into the game. What happens to those people that haven't played the first one?
Why do you think that that's a concern? I mean, I haven't played Destiny, so I don't know exactly what the structure of it is, but why would it be any different than just being able to play through the old content and get your levels that way if that's something you were interested in?
Well, I think part of it stems from just because some of the, I guess, huge changes that they've done in terms of the mechanics and leveling. So I guess a lot of the previous weapons and things that kind of become obsolete to the point where it's not even worth picking up. But like Chris was saying, in terms of, when they release Destiny 2, they're legit releasing a Destiny 2. And granted, we don't know if it's just going to be like another huge expansion pack or if it's going to be a completely brand new standalone experience. But I don't know. It seems like it's a harder concept for them to manage condensing the experience based on just like that one disc versus a hugely established MMO world where they can just keep adding stuff over and over again.
I really don't know how they're going to quote unquote solve this. I mean, are all the old areas going to be included in the second one? I mean, I really can't see how they're going to do this. They'll probably think of something, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, naturally, between events, you have some sort of lull, right? Like, shit's not constantly happening. So just let people jump on board after the lull. It doesn't really matter what happens before, does it? But the game does have a unique sort of release structure, but I think that's maybe just something about trying to adapt that MMO sort of style to a different genre. At least from what I hear, I think they're doing all right. But the thing, at least what I've seen in The Division, looks like that's going to be pretty cool too.
Yeah, but the way that seems to be set up, there's not much information about that game out there yet. But the way that seems to be set up is that it's going to be a continuous, persistent world thing that's just going to be there always. So the way that they worded the press releases and stuff seems to me like the entire city will just be there and they'll just be tacking things onto that city.
Yeah, so they won't have to worry about story, or like they won't have to worry about fragmented player bases and stuff because they'll just have a release and a world that they just bolt stuff onto.
Well, and they'll probably still segment the new bits off for the people that buy the content, because no way that there's not going to be paid DLC for that game. No way. But it seems like that game is more set up like the traditional MMO, even though it's not. It's like Destiny. It's not really an MMO. It just has other people in some areas. But the way that it's set up seems like it's more like a traditional MMO than Destiny is.
Do you think for those MMO Lite style games, the recurring expansions can become a problem? Because I know, like for a game like World of Warcraft, for example, I guess especially recently, there's been an expansion almost like every year. And that's just expected. People know, oh, hey, I'm going to buy the next installment and content patch in the series. But with a game like Destiny, I don't know if because of the fact that people pick it up as like a hard copy or whatever. I don't know if like the way they handle expansions, if it's eventually going to grate on people. Because I guess the console market isn't really necessarily used to that model where you're constantly having to buy updates to the game.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that could possibly be problematic somewhere down the road, but I can't say that with absolute certainty.
Yeah, I think it's good though. I mean, I like if you wanted to boil an MMO all the way down to the bottom and say this is the framework of an MMO, I have no problem putting that almost everywhere, because I think on its face it's kind of cool to just be in a world with lots of people and have it be an us versus them, you know, us versus the game kind of mentality. Just stack that anywhere you want. I think it's pretty cool.
It's being used more now. The new Need for Speed is going to do the exact same thing.
Yep.
Like the whole thing is drop in, drop out. You will see other players drive around the city that the game is set in.
Like, we have the technology now. Why not do it? I don't think you lose anything by adding MMO Lite features to basically everything.
Oh no, I'm in love with the concept. I really like it, and even though it's not really massive, it's not like the first M in MMO massive. It's not really that, but it's just enough to make it feel like the world is larger than it actually is.
Do you think that might be the future? Because I know a constant argument that I hear people debating is that MMOs are kind of dying. You have a couple of really big ones now, but it just seems like the popularity of them isn't there anymore. But in exchange, we're seeing a lot of these, smaller MMO Lite titles that are actually having a relatively, large amount of success.
Yeah, it's not dying. It's changing.
Yeah, it's changing. We're not getting the same. We're not getting the same MMO we've gotten over and over. They're taking. I think they're taking the best parts of MMO. Which my favorite thing about MMOs is like I said earlier, kind of the passive multiplayer where you're around people but they're not playing with you. I love that. Like, it just makes me feel like I'm being included in, I don't even want to say a larger story, but it just makes me feel more immersed in that world, I guess, if I see other people playing.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's why, if anything, people think that MMOs are dying, because people have harvested all the organs out. Like, they have the good parts. And they're taking the good parts and putting them in other places and just discarding the chaff.
That's a good point, because for as much inspiration as MMOs have given these genres, there's still a lot of tedium involved in them in terms of grinding, leveling, and all that. And if you were to tell me, hey, would you like to play a game like Destiny or a game like World of Warcraft? I'm more than likely to pick a game like Destiny just because of how streamlined it is now.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Yeah. At this point in time, I would agree. Destiny is a lot less grindy. It's gotten a lot less grindy now in 2.0. And especially if you compare it to one of the traditional MMOs like World of Warcraft, which are very grind heavy. Yeah, Destiny is more drop in, drop out, which is fine by me. It's actually better in my eyes.
And it lets you draw on what were sort of limitations about MMOs previously, because to have such a large amount of people, you couldn't make it skill-based in the traditional sense.
Right.
You had skill rotations and positioning and things like that, but like as far as what you would consider like active skills, like FPS skills and action-based sort of things, it wasn't technically possible to do that when MMOs were coming around.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've seen in the past few years, I've seen I guess World of Warcraft seems to be the MMO that everybody tends to use as like the blueprint for everything now. This is this is the most successful model. We either have to copy this or we have to go the complete opposite direction. And I've been seeing more and more titles trying to steer away from World of Warcraft's like combat model and go into a more active combat. So I think Terra did that. Guild Wars 2 tried doing that. What was the other one that came out? The space one.
WildStar.
Yeah, WildStar. Again, they did like the active combat, but again, it didn't really work in the MMO setting for whatever reason. A lot of those games just ended up flopping and then becoming free to play. But meanwhile, you have these MMO Lites that they do have that active combat, and it seems to work a lot better when you trim the fat, as a way of saying it.
Well, I don't think WildStar failed because of its combat system.
No, that's true. It wasn't combat. It was a myriad of other issues, and mainly appealing to the hardcore crowd. But again, like I said, it's more of the example that you see. There's all these very lofty MMOs that are trying to change the formula and going for a more active combat base. And you don't see them performing as well in general versus these MMO Lites that, it almost seems like the active combat is already a part of that particular genre, and they're just adopting those MMO mechanics into it as well.
Or they're fixing what has always been a problem with MMOs. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, but the thing that WildStar did was trying to cater to an old crowd with new mechanics, and that didn't really gel with a lot of the people. Like the combat system is pretty unique.
That's the thing, right? Like it's that entrenched sort of idea that you have in your head when you think MMO. And it's just the conflict of that versus the new stuff. I think it's great.
Yeah, maybe it just needs to be redefined, the term MMO. and a lot more games are incorporating that MMO Lite bit into it, and it seems to go over pretty well. So I'm looking forward to what's going to happen in the future.
So MOBAs have become popular, extremely popular within the last 5 years or so. And another genre that has seemingly fallen off of the map is RTS games, real-time strategy. And it seems that MOBAs are kind of I want to say a reduced version of an RTS. I'm not sure if that's quite the words I want to use, but do you guys think that MOBAs are kind of the logical conclusion of where the RTS genre was going, or are we going to see an RTS kind of bounce back in the future?
I think MOBAs are as big right now because they sort of lifted on the coattails of the success of esports. Like the dawn of esports made it possible for MOBAs to become as big as they are now. And I don't see that changing for a very, very long time.
If I had to put forth a theory, I would say that an RTS game is broken into two elements. You have your base building, and then you have your actual micro. You know, like your micromanagement, moving all the units around and stuff. And I think that for whatever reason, probably, esports popularity is part of it, but I think that the MOBA has turned out to be a more satisfying place for people to get the micro side, and that the base building stuff has all transitioned into larger turn-based strategy games.
I don't know. Like, I'd almost say that MOBAs are to strategy games what like fantasy football is to D&D. It's like the D&D for jocks version of it.
What? That SAT metaphor was completely lost on me.
No, it's
like what?
Explain.
Why? Yeah, please.
Well, because MOBAs, the whole concept of MOBA started as a deviation from it was a custom map from Aeon Strife, I think it was, for StarCraft 1, and it was just a really simple, 4 players control like 4 elite units, and they have like little AI companions, and they fight like another AI controlled faction, and then Dota came out in Warcraft 3, right? Like was it Reign of Chaos?
Yeah,
and like that's what started the whole genre for MOBAs. It was like they just started off as like a very watered down version of the strategy game, where they took apart, of which I personally think they actually took apart the micromanaging aspect of it in terms of gathering resources and all that stuff, and they just focused on like a very small, just focus on your character. And then from then on, you started seeing more and more. There was like a deviation because if you look at Asia, strategy games are still huge over there, and meanwhile the Western approach, MOBAs became more popular. So I think they just kind of diverged in terms of like culture, but I don't think they're necessarily like an evolution of them. I think they're just a separate path. I think it cuts down like the micromanaging aspect of a lot of it.
Yeah, it seems to me that they took like the RTS structure where you have your macro and your micro, and they split the micro between 5 people. So you have your macro in MOBAs, which is, your overall game plan, your game, like the pace that you want the game to flow at, when you're going to get objectives, like all that stuff. And then you have your micro, which is the individual players doing their individual things, and it's just, they took the micro from RTS that you would be doing all by yourself as one guy, and they assigned a chunk of it to each player.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot more digestible to a lot of people.
I mean, it's not a bad thing. I just think that, like you said, like the way we're digesting the content just happened to change, because at least for us, it seems that we're less concerned with multitasking than we are focusing on our own little, like, small segment of it. And I think that's why the MOBA genre became so popular here in the West, because for us, like you said, it's just you take that giant meta of like the micromanagement, and instead of it being one person handling all aspects of it, it's split into different players now.
It's got very little downtime outside of dev timers, basically. Mm-hmm. It's just action all the time. Everybody has a specific task, and those tasks are very engaging. Try to skirt the enemy team so you can get a mercenary camp, for instance. Stuff like that. It's way more action packed. You don't sit in your base, try to build up your base as fast as possible and creating your armies and stuff so you can attack. It's just you start doing stuff from the moment the gates open, which makes it a more engaging experience most of the time.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's more engaging, because I mean the meta for strategy games I still think is leagues, like not leagues, but it's it's way more complex than it is for for MOBAs, because I mean the meta for strategy games, you start building your army, which depends on research trees, which depends on tech trees, which depends on like buildings in a very specific fashion. That depends on what resources you're harvesting at one point, and there's very set check marks as you're playing that, hey, by this time in the turn I need to have like this many resources so I can allocate to build this unit and go from there. It's very, very methodical. And with MOBAs, it feels like you still have that to a degree, degree, but it seems a lot lesser. You focus on your character and you focus on your skill tree, and you hope to God that your team is putting the same amount of effort as you are.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's interesting, like the things that did carry over and the things that didn't.
Yeah.
Like using one unit who basically upgrades throughout the game instead of, having a new unit from the base and having to do any kind of base building aspect just completely fell to the wayside.
Yeah, instead it's character building and working with your team to make your character the best possible version of that character for the situations that your team is getting into.
I don't know if that's just based on, I guess, our culture, because when you look at Western games, they all follow, at least the majority of them follow a very kind of like similar approach to it, where it's very action influenced, it's very, fast paced. There's a lot of themes that that I recognize in MOBAs.
Yeah, they kind of came from, I guess they just took a certain type of player who really liked the microing a group of units and gave them, their own game where they didn't have to worry about the base building stuff anymore.
Yeah, because those bits are the high points of the game. I mean, even in the traditional RTS game, like, for instance, StarCraft or Warcraft 3, for instance, the fights between you and the other team, those were the high points of every match.
Yeah, for sure.
So it would make sense to remove the downtime that is base building and just have it action-packed from moment 1 until the moment the core blows up. And the entire game seems designed to constantly put players on edge, to constantly draw them towards specific places on the map and have team fights.
I think another part of MOBA success is that, MOBA success over RTS is that you've pretty much taken the RTS genre and made it, good for TV, I guess is the phrase I'll use. So
yeah, that's definitely true.
I mean, because when you're watching competitive, StarCraft or something, the announcers are trying to bounce back and forth between all the little micromanagement decisions that one guy is making, and they're trying to explain why he's making these decisions in relation to his other decisions. Whereas in MOBAs, you've got 5 players and they all got their different positions. And that way, when one player is kind of having a lull, you can go to another player's lane, and there's probably something going on worth spectating.
That is true.
While there isn't always something worth spectating in RTS games. So I think it's almost like they took RTS and just made it more spectator friendly. And it's really caught on, obviously, because there's a huge following for those kinds of games.
Yeah, but that's true, because when you think about RTSs, there's a lot of downtime between when you're, building your units and just traveling to the enemy base. Whereas, you said, and when you're watching a MOBA game, chances are that 99% of the time you are going to find some kind of conflict in one of the lanes at any given time.
Yeah, and if you don't, what's great is if you don't, you're still cycling between 5 players. So every time the camera changes, the viewer has to reset on what they expect from that angle. So if the camera goes from top to mid lane, the viewer has to readjust, say, okay, now we're in mid lane, this should be happening, this shouldn't be happening, this is what the player's doing, this is what his enemy's doing. And every single time they change the camera, you have to make that calculation again. And I think it really, even if nothing's going on, you're still doing that in your head, and it keeps you kind of occupied and entertained during the downtime in those games, like laning phase or something like that.
Yeah, the genius in MMOs is that it's easy enough to understand what the goal is, and it's easy enough to understand why some plays that players make are impressive.
So if all those factors have contributed to the rise of the MOBA, then what has caused the fall of the RTS? Do you think that they just draw from the same pool of people, and then there's just, once enough of them who are interested in MOBAs travel that way, there's not enough people left over to sustain the RTS genre?
I mean, I came from RTS games.
Yeah.
I think so, and like I said, just based on its roots, since the MOBA genre did start, it literally started as a part of RTS. It just got kind of ripped out of it. I think it doesn't necessarily detract the audience, but I think it's definitely from the same pool.
Yeah,
because there is a type of strategy involved in the competitive nature into it.
Yeah, plus like you said, it started as a mod, so the people who are very into the traditional RTS made the MOBA as big as it is today. So they are definitely responsible for its popularity now.
So there was always a part of the player base who wanted to play something more like a MOBA game.
Yeah, apparently there was a niche.
Yeah, and then it just drew more people.
I think that the MOBA is also, at least in maybe Western culture, I think it's also just more attractive to watch, like Ryan was saying, as a spectator sport, because, it's faster paced, it's more energetic, it's flashier. So it's easier for players to just sit down and just enjoy a match. And they're over relatively quickly too. When you play, even a Dota 2 or League of Legends match is 20, 30 minutes maybe, give or take?
30 to 40.
Dota 2 is usually Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, when you think about playing like a game of StarCraft, how long do those matches normally last?
10 minutes, something like that.
So is it fair? I mean, is it fair to put forth the theory that the rise of the MOBA caused the death of the RTS?
I think so.
I don't necessarily say if it caused the death of it, but I do think that the MOBA just kind of like took the spotlight.
That's true. I wouldn't say that RTSs are dead, but
No, because they're not. But MOBA's redefined what an RTS is.
I don't think you could take a Dota 2 player and have them sit through a Warcraft 3 match, but I think you can do the like vice versa though.
I don't
think
know.
it's just it seems weird. Like I don't know, because I'm trying to picture it, because StarCraft and all that stuff, it's still relatively popular, but I don't know how much of that is just from like the nostalgia aspect of it.
I think it's mostly nostalgia at this point.
Because like I said, no, I just get it almost feels like you could have somebody playing StarCraft and then immediately have them playing like a MOBA. And it'll be something infinitely more entertaining for them. Like they'll have a blast with it versus if you were to take somebody that's used to that fast-paced action in a MOBA and put them into like a strategy game, which is a little slower paced. I don't think they would be as receptive to it.
which if I was making some sort of chart here, what I think would be interesting is I would theorize you might see that RTSs have tapered off, MOBAs have grown, and also turn-based strategy games have grown.
Yes, I would definitely agree to that.
I think very, very objectively, like I don't have any data to back this up, but it seems like that as the RTS pool has shrunk, that those people have then sectioned off into those other places. Because the last RTS I can think of was maybe Grey Goo, but outside of that, I've seen a lot more turn-based strategy games than I think I've ever seen before, and I've seen, MOBAs become more popular. So it seems to me that that's what's happening, but I don't have any proof for it.
No, I mean, because I got to remember, because even Grey Goo had a relatively small burst of, I guess, attention in the media and from the community in general, and I'm sure it's doing well. But you don't hear about it nearly as much. But like you said. You do hear MOBAs, and you definitely do hear a lot more turn-based strategy games. So it almost feels like that RTS umbrella that we had just kind of split into two divergent paths now. And then we have half the fan base, which are into the kind of like the fast-paced battles you get when like the two sides meet, going towards MOBAs. And then you had the more critical kind of like micromanaging aspect of it going more towards the turn-based strategy games.
Yeah, like tech trees and, build orders and all that kind of stuff. Like the people who found that interesting. Obviously, they don't lose anything by making it turn-based because maybe they weren't necessarily heavily invested in the micro side anyway. Right. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's just an audience split. But like I said, I don't have the data. That's just what it seems like. Interesting.
Yeah, so what do you think we're going to see RTS ever make a comeback, or are we just going to see it more fragmented and MOBA kind of stays the king until the next big thing comes along?
Well, I think we will see a resurgence at some point. I mean, people seem to still want traditional RTS games. It's just not as frequent. Like the focus is not on that side of the RTS right now. But I think at some point there's probably going to be a major hit.
I think we'll see a brief resurgence with StarCraft. What is it? Legacy of the Void. I think we'll see a resurgence with that. And there's been rumors that they might consider rebooting the Warcraft RTS franchise.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I really want them to do that.
But again, I don't know how much of it is an actual demand and how much of it is just a lot of like rose-tinted nostalgia. People saying like, "Oh, I would love to play this game," when in reality they don't. They're kind of remembering the cool epic story and the cool epic, heat of the moment battles, and they're not remembering the slow pace kind of ramp and building up of like the bases and the touches you had to do.
Yeah, makes you think, right? Is there life for the Warcraft franchise after World of Warcraft? I hope so as well.
I hope so too. It's such a staple.
Yeah, plus I still play Warcraft 3 every now and then, and it hasn't lost any of its luster for me.
Dude, the Frozen Throne expansion was freaking awesome.
So good.
So we'll see. I think you might see a lot of games like Total War and what is it, Creative Assembly?
Yeah, I think we'll still see them around, but I don't think they'll kind of be as bright in the spotlight as they once were.
Well, they are making that Warhammer game right now, and if they pull that off, that is a very, very
that'll be a big one.
Large potential fan base.
But that gives it to you. I mean, by making the base building stuff turn-based, you give a lot more sort of leeway to being able to work with very intense kind of statistical stuff and more complicated tech trees because it doesn't have to be done, very quickly. So maybe you do that turn-based and the battle's real time. I think that there's a gap there that kind of game could run into.
Plus, if the turn-based stuff is bite-sized, like the micromanagement stuff is bite-sized, it becomes less daunting to a player, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see that. But I think that we're using different definitions of micro, because I've always thought that micro applied to the actual moving the unit and the actual way that you manipulate your units in combat.
Yeah, it's a subtle tactical play, isn't it?
At least that's just the definition that I'm
unit placement, stuff like that.
Yeah, but the grand sort of how I manage this city is also micromanagement. It's just not where I've
I've always pictured micromanagement in regards to like how you move each individual piece.
Yeah, I agree.
But who knows? The future's bright. It'd be interesting to see somebody pull off something new with the RTS genre. Maybe there's just not much more to do there. Maybe the RTSs just are what they are, and there's not a lot of room for innovation. But I can't quite imagine.
There's always somebody who invents like a completely new angle to a very old concept.
Maybe we'll see like a MOBA where you actually get to design your own map, or like it'll have like a really light base building component to it.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, that would be cool.
Think about it, it would be like a MOBA, but like part of the meta would be designing like a good base layout to make it more difficult for the enemies to break into it.
That's a very cool concept. I like that.
At that point, it would just be an RTS.
I'm gonna say like maybe we'll see it come full circle.
I don't know if they want to mix MOBAs with like classic base building stuff. The meta is going to be really, really annoying.
Well, yeah, I was thinking. I think like it would be cool if one of the people's roles was to be the base builder, and somehow I feel like it would get very complicated very fast, very easily.
Oh man, that'd be so cool.
But
I mean, let me tell you about a game called Natural Selection. I mean, it's been done in other genres before, where one person kind of takes control of the strategy and then everybody else are units. I think it would be a really easy thing to implement in that style of game, like an RTS/MOBA style game. So that'd be cool. All right, last week for our game club, we played Trials Evolution Turbo?
yes,
Right?
Trials Evolution Gold.
Yeah, that one. That game was a lot of fun. You can check out an annotation on this video, and it'll take you straight to our game club video for that. And as for next week, Enrique, what are we playing?
I have actually been feeling rather nostalgic in terms with all this talk about like narratives and things like that, and I actually want to go back and play the Secret of Monkey Island Special Edition.
Cool. Great choice.
It's one of the first point-and-click adventure games, and they kind of redid it with updating all the graphics, and you kind of have like that cool little mechanic where you can go back and forth and see what the game looked like before versus what they kind of updated to now. So,
never played it, so that's a good good excuse to finally play it.
Rubber chickens and red herrings.
there you go.
Cool.
Yeah, that'll be a hoot. So stay tuned for that, and if you want to talk to us about Monkey Island or give us your thoughts, you can send an email to selectcharacters@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as for everything else, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. You can go to our subreddit /r/selectcharacters, and the description for all these things will be in the show notes if you want to check that out. So get in touch and have a great week.
Later.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.